and Research and Innovation to order. Welcome back after the summer. New faces on the committee, I see. But always, these are very efficient meetings, I gotta tell you. We zip through these. So we will take up only one item for approval today, and that's action item 1A. And it's the approval of the minutes of the March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 2025 meeting. So I move the approval of action item 1A. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I will now put this to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions, any opposed? Hearing none, that item passed. So that's the only action item on the agenda today. So now we're going to move into information items. So our last meeting was held in executive session, but today the Research Foundation of CUNY, CUNY Foundation, President Hector Cordova Guzman will present the RF CUNY report, which will feature a comparison of fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025 award activity, as well as an update on federal grant stop work orders and rescissions. So then Associate Vice Chancellor for Research Rosemary Wesson will present the Office of Research report, which will discuss the potential indirect rate cuts and potential cuts to federally funded research grants. So President Cordova Guzman.
Trustee Torme, thank you for the opportunity to present our occasional usual report on the Research Foundation activities. Trustee Ramirez, welcome to the committee. Trustee Palacios, good to see you again. Trustee Newwander, my pleasure to have met you, and Trustee Whitten, also a pleasure to meet you. And of course, my dear colleague, Professor Gerozalmi, the chair of the Faculty Advisory Committee to the Research Foundation. As our chair indicated, I'll cover some activity. I always start by talking a little bit about the functions of the Research Foundation, because you will be surprised how often it comes up that folks may be not fully clear about what we do and how we divide the complexity of the research operation at CUNY. A lot of activities on the pre-award side happen on the campuses, in the departments. That's where the faculty reside, that's where their home is, and that's where the activity originates from. The activity of creating, innovating begins in departments and in academic disciplines and centers, right? Once those proposals go out, and if we're lucky that they get funded, then the project is moved to the Research Foundation for it to be administered. The Research Foundation is responsible for making sure that the project's administered following all appropriate federal, state, city laws and all appropriate and applicable federal and sponsor rules and requirements. Responsibility for the ethical conduct of research, for the proper protection of animals and related remains always with CUNY, as does the responsibility for making decisions about the content and what the project's going to spend the resources on. It's their project. We make sure that the expenses are allowable by law and by the sponsor. But the decision about how to and where to spend the money on is always retained by the CUNY faculty member who's the principal investigator. So with that, there are a range of other functions that we play and perform for the City University, including my very favorite, which is the last one. Other duties is assigned by City University of New York leadership. We're always there to serve the complex research and sponsor program operations at CUNY. And we are organized by a number of departments. We have our operations department that has the largest department, which is our grants and contracts. Every project is assigned a project administrator and assistant administrator. Average administrator manages about 230 projects, dozens of teams, about 54 employees in that department alone. Then our procurement department pays and buys. About $190 million worth of materials, equipment, and supplies was purchased last year, included about 69,000 items, single items that were purchased or procured. I have a small customer service unit, administrative services, and we manage the building where we live and where the CUNY School of Journalism and CUNY Finance also reside. We have a human resources department that provides services to the 14,000 unique employees we hire in a given year. And we have about a steady workforce of about 8,000 individuals on a given time. So they're serviced by our HR department. Close coordination, of course, with CUNY HR when there are matters that deal with relations between CUNY employees and RF employees. You know, an RF employee is a person that essentially has a beginning and an end to their appointment. They work on a project, and a project has a beginning and an end. So they're employed by the Research Foundation for the duration of their project, which has a beginning and an end. Now, that end can be extended, the project can continue, but it has a definitive end at some point. Our finance department, our systems and information services, our legal affairs, our award proposal support unit, internal audit, and your president's office. Let's talk a little bit about where we are with the stop work orders that we've received as a result of changes in the federal government funding priorities. We've received about 107 stop work orders to projects. About 76 of those are active. About 26 have been rescinded. And about 5 were canceled before the award even started, which is quite a shame. The original budget for those affected awards was about $64.7 million. But we had already spent a portion of that money by the time we got the cancellation. So the amount at risk, let's say, it's $37.7 million for those projects that have been that are with active stop work orders. And originally, at first, we received some kind of a reason why the project was canceled, either changes to federal bureaucracy or DEI. But more recently, the cancellations have come with a single sentence that says no longer meets agency priorities. And that's it. There's nothing in more detail than that. We have data again on which campus are affected by active, rescinded, or terminated before it even started type of stop work orders. We keep track, by campus, and of the rescinded ones, of course, by campus also. Hunter and City, Lehman have gotten some rescissions. And then again, we keep track of the funds. As I mentioned, about $37.7 million are at stake. That's the amount remaining to be spent on the projects, and we keep track of other data. Just to give you some examples of the kinds of projects that are stopped or canceled, Professor Waldis at BMCC had a $2.5 million 5-year NSF EDU core research grant. Was terminated within 9 months of the project starting. The grant investigated and evaluated the experiences of STEM majors with disabilities on chronic health condition that prevented them from obtaining formal and informal accommodations in their studies. The professor and her 4-person team conducted over 2,000 interviews that will now risk not being analyzed because of the grant's termination. There's a quote from the professor. I was reading interviews with these students this morning going, oh my God, this is not right that these students are pouring out all these horrible details to us in these interviews, and we're just going to throw it away because we didn't have a chance to analyze the data. It's just not right, professor said. There's a team of the demographers at Brooke College, the Institute for Demographic Studies. For many, many years, they struggled and hustled to try to get into one of the very prestigious center grants that the Social Security Administration gives. They finally were able to do it. It was a $5 million grant. 5 years, it's open. Essentially what you do is you do research based on agency requests for research. Canceled immediately after it started. So about 14, 15 faculty members were involved in that project. So we have story after story after story of really critical research that was being done that has risked being canceled. And I know CUNY stepped in and provided some bridge funding, which has been phenomenal, but nothing substitute a good federal dollar for research, as many of you know really well. So in addition to the kind of human cost, let's say, we have scientific cost related to increased volatility for projects, decreased income predictability and security for researchers, lower time to innovation and discovery, more difficult environment to do research and sponsor programs. We have the human cost related to reduced training opportunities and loss of employment and income. We have 1,364 employees working on federal sponsored grants and programs, and this is going to come up when we talk about the potential shutdown. 42% of those are students, including undergraduate, master's, and a significant proportion of PhD students. 60.4% are female, 63.1% are Black, Asian, Hispanic, or Native American. So this is who's affected by this kind of slowdown in the research operation. The impact of these proposed changes on graduate education are significant. So overall, federal scientific and human impacts are very heavy. Let me stop here for a second and see if there are any questions on stop work orders and related topics before I go into where we are with our activity. Yes.
Has there been any concerted effort to try to get, private funding? It's never going to replace NIH funding, certainly, but when you have a project that you would just highlight,
yes,
and you have all this work there,
yes,
that needs analysis, and
yes,
you need X numbers of dollars to, yes, finish up a project,
yes,
is there efforts ongoing, yes, to go out to private funding?
We have sent lists to CUNY Central to be aware of, and then work with the researchers to ensure that they get as much bridge. And in the case of that particular project, they call it kind of analysis of funding as possible.
Understanding those that get stop before they start, that's a whole different story.
Right.
You're probably never going to replace that. But for ongoing projects that are near the end, and you need just those extra dollars.
Or you already have collected the data, it's
Yeah, right,
a
yeah,
shame,
yes,
but maybe
it's
Dr.
like-
Wesson has other examples.
So that
or
would be,
anything
to me,
Well, I'll add that some funders and philanthropic partners have come forward to the chancellor, which is why the chancellor has requested this information,
Yeah.
because some of these, resonate with some of the
Right,
the
right,
funders,
of
and so
course, yes,
absolutely,
good.
yeah.
I
And
think
foundations and.
Right,
yeah.
that's what, I mean, and I know private foundations and, even public nonprofits are stepping up trying to replace federal, but it can't replace it totally. but-
We have heard from them that everybody else, of course, is coming to them
course.
also.
Of
So
course,
we
of
have to
course.
differentiate ourselves, and I think making reference to the specific statistics on who we serve and who's particularly impacted can go a long way, because I think there's affinity between who we serve and who foundations want to serve.
Yeah, so hopefully working hand in hand with the development
Yeah.
teams
Correct.
at the different colleges who are aware of the priorities that different foundations have, to be able to do kind of a matchmaking there, to do the reach out would be what I would suggest.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
That was my exact question.
Okay.
Raise my hand when you're
Right
back.
behind you.
Great minds. Can I just ask, Chair, if, are we pushing back with legal and
Yes, indeed.
governmental affairs to see if we can
Yes.
reverse course on some of these?
Yeah, the rescissions are of two sorts. Rescissions that have happened because third-party legal action or so, or because we've been parties to legal actions that the state attorney general has been a part of that have resulted in victories in terms of projects being restated. I can think of one at Lehman College in education that was just truly phenomenal. It's a grant that was to train STEM teachers for the public schools, so they could more effectively teach the minority populations in the public schools to embrace and love science, right? So, grant like that, and I think it was part of a lawsuit, but maybe Jane has more to add.
You make it sound more positive than I think it's actually
My job.
And we certainly encourage the campuses to file administrative appeals, and the Office of General Counsel assists with that, along with the Campus Council. To date, as far as I know, those have not resulted in anything being reinstated, and that's consistent across the U.S. I mean, CUNY is not being treated differently. The Attorney General's office has, with other states, brought certain litigation. Again, those results have been mixed, and we'll have to see how things fall
Yeah,
out.
and I would encourage you to not just go the legal route, but also governmental affairs, speaking on behalf of politicians everywhere, a good lobbyist is worth diving.
No, we feed this information. We get requests regularly, as the Vice Chancellor knows, from Government Affairs Office, from the Governor's Office, and we supply the data immediately in terms of giving them, keeping them up to speed. Yes, I mean, there are the administrative appeals are not designed to succeed, right? They're very narrow.
I think it's like Ukraine, it's important that we keep fighting even if we're.
Yeah.
But that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think we tell folks, and I think on that Dr. West and I and others agree, that now is the time to run towards grants, not run away from them, right? There's still money out there, and you don't want to be discouraged by a discouraging climate.
Amen.
You want to try to keep pushing, Yes.
So my question is regarding if there's a standard flow of information and updates to affected students of these SWOs.
We have a protocol for how we go from notification to ensuring that it's a proper notification, to ensuring that action is taken, to ensuring that we kind of protect employment as much as we can. So we meet with the project directors, we talk to them about can folks be moved to other projects? Can we provide some bridge funding to ensure that folks are not let go too quickly, let's say, right? So we try to do, and then we've provided to some of the projects, we've provided additional technical assistance and support to folks in connecting to either training and or unemployment office and things of that nature. But the first course is always to try to get them in another project. We try to get the folks in some other project, yeah. And student impacts are of two kinds. One is on the employment side, and the other is we have about 50 to 60 fellows that were in grants where they received fellowship payments, and those grants have been canceled. So those are also quite tragic. It's not just direct employment, it's also kind of fellowship support for some of the work. As a result of these changes in the federal environment, our grant taking went down by 10% last year. And the reduction is essentially the last 2 quarters of the fiscal year, which started in January of 2025, right? The first 2 quarters of the year were doing great. We're probably going to break the record we set the previous year, about $671 million. But we had really difficult last 2 quarters of the fiscal year, first 2 quarters of the calendar year. And the balance of that was we were down about $64 million or 10%. And if you notice, $31 million down on federal. 16%. That has an impact on the state and the city because some of the state and city money we get is federal pass-through money. So federal dislocations are significant, and again, it resulted in a $64 million. You see the bottom by purpose. Research was down 16% or $40 million of those $64 million. Training
Is that
and
Dormitory Authority of New York?
I beg your pardon?
The bottom, the R.
No, I'll explain, Trustee. It's a good question. We manage the program for the District Attorney, the District Attorney of New York.
My acronyms.
Danny, District Attorney of New York is our acronym for Danny. When they got a fine for some kind of a settlement, they we essentially managed the projects for them. They directed us to say, give X to this organization, Y to this organization. And we managed the project like we manage other grants. But that program's winding down because it was the previous district attorney. So that grant is expiring. So that's why you see it winding down.
They're quite a staggering reduction.
Let me try to keep moving in the interest of time. On the federal side, you can see $4 million down in Department of Health and Human Services, received a lot of press. 17, almost $18 million down Department of Education. We had received over fiscal year 23 and 24 significant efforts in government affairs, about $20 to $25 million in earmarks. Those disappeared, so that has a big impact on Department of Ed. Those earmarks came through Department of Ed. And then $70 million less in National Science Foundation. That's also directly related to the cuts. Our National Science Foundation funding tends to be follow a kind of up and down 2-year pattern. As you can tell, fiscal year 25 was a year where we expected to be down, but we're down way below the average. Average is 34 million. We went to 26 million. The year before, we did 44 million. So it's a huge hit from 44 to 26, as you can tell, and below where we expected to be with the NSF. So there's some cyclical effect to the NSF, but also secular, and we're worried a little bit about the secular piece. At the state level, again, state ed and Office of Children and Family Services, we have a gigantic contract with OCFS. $22 million contract that when the timing of that one contract alone affects what the overall pattern of state funding looks like. So that contract, I think, is being settled. So we should be back in even shape. And with the city, we do tons of business, all kinds of departments, some ups and downs with social services, maybe DYCD, but again, those go up and down. It's about 7% decline. And then other activity, we're worried a little bit about the $3 million in private foundations. This is a time where we should actually be going up in private foundations. And again, as you can see, we're down in all, but federal is the biggest decline. That explains the biggest change between 24 and 25 is the decline in federal. And I did it by quarter so you could see, and again, it's the last 2 quarters of the year. I mean, we did $107 million, 108, 120, and then went down to 97 the fourth quarter of the fiscal year. So again, down by quarter. We track data in 2 ways. We track awards. Think of award as pledges, and we track expenses. Think of those as realized pledges, right? And in the Dickensian world where we live, our awards are down by 10%, but our expenses are up by 5%. So we spent actually $28 million more last year than we did the year before. So on the expense side, we continue to do healthy spending. Awards and expenses will cross at some point over the next 3 to 6 months, and I think we're going to stabilize at the $620 million expense level and probably at the $630, $640 award level. We had a really, really challenging top panelist July. July of last year, 25, was $122 million. July this year was $93 million. That's a $28 million difference in 1 month. That's a big, big hit, 24% down. But August was on fire. August last year was $62 million. August this year was $80 million. So the balance is in the middle. We're down about 6%. So I'm optimistic that we'll probably we're going to end up the year in a kind of even place if things keep up. So rather than being down 24%, we're actually down 6% because we had an up 17% month of August. Last two things real quickly, Madam Chair. Sorry for taking so long. We have a page on the federal funding impact where we give guidance whenever we get these stop work orders, because we are telling people don't act based on newspaper reports, for heaven's sake. Those can be all very volatile. So make sure that we hear from us directly if you're going to stop working or some such. And we've issued joint guidance with the Office of Research on a protocol of how to handle stop work orders. That's available on our website. And similarly, the specter of a federal government shutdowns there. We have a page on the federal government shutdown. We send the first alert Friday where we're basically telling people we know something may be coming, beware. And then the second alert will come where we actually give people guidance on what we're going to do. No new employees. We're going to be very tight on this on spending. And if we suspect this shutdown, A, is going to last long, and B, runs the risk of us not getting reimbursed, and I'll stop there for a minute for you to contemplate that, because federal grants work on reimbursement. If there's any suspicion, in previous shutdowns, we've gotten reimbursed. If there's a suspicion that that's how they're going to extract their revenge this time, by saying, oh, you want to keep going? We're not going to reimburse you, then we could be, our federal payroll is $4.4 million a month. You know how quickly you can burn over 4.4? In 2 months, you burn over almost $10 million, right? So we got to be super careful not to get ahead of ourselves here. So we're going to be monitoring this one really, really closely. And we may need to issue really what people may consider kind of like drastic guidance early in the process, just to conserve capital. Right, and our first priority is employees. Make sure we keep employees and emergency expenses. Like we have animal facilities and things like that. You got to make sure you maintain those. You can. And then we're probably going to have a joint committee between CUNY and RF. We'll be like an appeals committee for people that want to make their case that expense should happen. There should be some group that reviews for that. We're going to try to do as much as we can with guidance, but sometimes it may end up with, because every project, we have a motto at the RF, which is, you know what the most important project we work on? Your project. So if you have a kind of an emergency mechanism, guess whose emergency is? Everybody has an emergency, right? So we need an objective mechanism for that to happen. So let me stop here. And again, we live in challenging times where we're all trying to approach this in a very collaborative approach. So I think we're in good shape. If the theory here is that we're going to shake the tree for kind of survival of the fittest, don't be worried. The Research Foundation and CUNY are holding that tree really solid. They have a really solid operation, and we'll survive this one too. Thanks a lot. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any?
I'll take any questions, yeah.
Yes, David.
Please.
So on the shutdown, we got the notice last week, but you described some additional things.
Yeah.
Do you have a timeline in mind about when kind of the tightening would occur? How far along into a shutdown would you go before you would?
So today the finance department's updating the burn rate by college. See how quickly we're burning money. That will determine. We have a line of credit that we can draw on, but again, the challenge before hasn't been access to capital. We confront $20-30 million if we need to. The thing is that we're going to get it back. That's the risk. And, if you have anybody that knows or can do that political risk analysis, please help us, because this is going to be a rough one to kind of game. But all I can tell you, and I'm limited in my understanding of these politics, but the politics on this one feel ugly as hell. Like there doesn't seem to be like a clear path out of it. So I'd say, Professor, in 2 weeks, we're probably going to be looking at this. And we may have to shut all OTPS in 2-3 weeks. So have some inside info. Go spend. Go spend now. Send those receipts this week. Before we have to shut the thing down a little bit more than we'd like. And again, we have a line of credit. We're not going to shut everything down immediately, right? But we're going to have to kind of send signals to folks. If you have major expenses, if you have certain things, we're going to have to work together on how to manage those. Sorry, I don't have a more definitive kind of day-by-day answer, but we do. Again, I haven't gotten the report yet, but they told me that by the end of the day, they'll tell me like what a daily, weekly burn rate is by campus, so that we can. And again, we we won't be able to do things that are different by campus. We're just gonna have to kind of shut things down more universally.
I think letting us know as soon as you know would be appreciated.
The second alert is probably gonna have a different admonition than before, which says, unlike in previous times, there's a risk we may not get reimbursed, which may lead us to have to take more drastic measures sooner. So at least we wanna send that alert. I think a 2-week horizon is probably sensible. Don't you think?
Hard to say, but that's a good place to start.
Rose's presentation's after yours. If you give her the
Any
clicker.
questions?
Yeah,
I think
yes,
she could just
absolutely.
advance.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So again, let me introduce myself. I'm Rose Weston, Associate Vice Chancellor for Research, and partnering with Hector and the RF, we're trying to manage what's coming down the pike in terms of what I'm going to talk about, potential IDC cuts, as well as potential cuts to the overall federal funding. Why is this doubles?
I know.
I think it's because you're presenting a PDF.
So, we'll just work with it? So, you guys may have heard that federal agencies have proposed a 15% IDC cut. So, in particular, these agencies, NIH, Department of Energy, NSF, and Department of Defense, have all said, we're going to 15% IDC. Now, if you're not familiar, across CUNY, our IDC rates are anywhere between 23% and over 70%. So when a federal agency says, we're going to cap our 15% IDC, we're going to cap our IDC at 15%, it sends shivers down the spine. So right now, we're on hold. So there's an injunction against NIH, so we're still using, CUNY is still using our negotiated F&A rate. Same is true with Department of Energy, NSF, and Department of Defense. But we don't know how long this is going to last. So there is a potential that all of our campuses will be capped at a 15% IDC rate. So what does that mean? The Research Foundation has done some calculations on how will that impact CUNY if all of our campuses are capped at a 15% IDC rate for federal funding. So the initial computations, the initial calculations say that we'll lose on the order of $34 million, but that translates into about 60 cents on every anticipated dollar to be recovered. So again, if you're not familiar with how IDC rates work, with an award, with a federal award or any kind of award, you have to spend on it. And then your IDC, whatever that rate is recovered and it's paid back to the campuses. So we sent in a lot of proposals here that had negotiated IDC rates between 23 and 72%. So we are expecting to receive that rate coming back to the campuses. If it's capped at 15%, then we start losing money, 60 cents on every dollar.
That's not retroactive, though, is it?
It's not retroactive, but when we put the proposals in, we put the proposals in for 5 years, 10
Right,
years,
right,
3
right,
years,
right.
whatever. But no,
If
it's
you-
not
If
retroactive.
you've done already 2 years, you're getting the negotiated
If
indirect
you've
for those first,
spent-
if you've spent it,
If you
if you've
spent
spent it, yes, yes, yes. But
On those.
stop going.
But any spending going forward would be at a capped rate. So there's an organization out there known as JAG, Joint Associations Group. It's a group of a number of agencies that are very interested in research. We, CUNY, are members of APLU, like Association of Public and Land Grant Universities. In the lower left-hand side is COGR, the Council on Government Relations. ACE, American. Say that again?
Should we know somebody at ACE?
Yeah, ACE, as I was just about to say. We are working with them as well intimately. So these groups have gotten together and said, look, what are we going to do if there is a 15% cap? How can we work with the federal government to explain to them that if you cap research at 15%, you're killing institutions? So they have come up with what they call two models. It's a basic model and an enhanced model, meaning that, look, we as institutions can't function at 15% IDC rate. So here's a proposition from various institutions across the country to say, instead of 15%, why don't you look at it this way? And this way, meaning a basic rate, it's kind of like your taxes. If you file a short form versus a long form. So the basic model would say, okay, campus A, your rate would be X. Whatever it is determined, whatever the negotiations come back with, that's what your rate would be. It would be hopefully higher than 15%, but probably lower than what the negotiated rate is. So somewhere in between there. The enhanced model is like if you itemize your taxes. You would go through individually and check, this is an expense I have on my campus. This is an expense I have on my campus. And as a result, this is the IDC that I'm proposing. That's what the JAG model has come up with. Fair accountability in research models. Are we there yet? No, we are definitely not there yet. JAG has been speaking with OMB, Office of Management and Budget, US OMB, and also with Congress people, trying to convince them that this is the approach we should take rather than a strict 15% IDC. It depends who you talk to. Some days it looks like it might be happening. Other days it looks like OMB is saying, nope, we're standing firm. But right now, this is not in the forefront of Congress. The shutdown is in the forefront of Congress. That's the discussions that are happening right now. So we'll see where this goes. So it's received conceptual agreement, briefed leaders in Congress and OMB, continuing to ask for input from the community, working with Congress, and then there's this other little thing called the uniform guidance. So no matter what happens down the road, the uniform guidance is a Bible, so to speak, as to how research is handled in the United States at various institutions. We know that Bible will need to be updated. Either it's going to say 15% and these are the things that need to be changed, or it's going to say the JAG model and these are the things that need to be changed. But everything is in flux right now. We don't know. We as CUNY are keeping tabs on where we're going, and we'll let you know when we find out. Other topic, you got a question?
About the IDC. So thank you for that and interesting ideas. What if the worst happens? How is CUNY preparing for the worst?
So the worst being 15%?
What are we not going to be able to do if 15% comes?
So we're running those models, and you know, it's not CUNY, it's the campuses. So each individual campus will have to take stock into what is going to happen. And I can't answer it right now because we are running those models as to how, if that is the worst case scenario, how will we work with that?
And clearly, I think you're going to have those. You have to have a plan. Something's going to happen. You're not going to get your negotiated rate. So,
Nope.
you can have rose-colored glasses and say we're going to get 50% of it, or
Right.
get the 50%. So I think it's a change to research across this country that every university has has lived on indirect costs. You know, they've run the universities on indirect costs. It's a new way of looking. I think it's gonna be a hard thing. You're not gonna be able to put all this stuff into indirect costs anymore. There's gonna be limits of what you can do. So it means an entirely new conceptual look on how you fund research within a university. Like what pockets of dollars are gonna, you still have to do these things. So the dollars have to come from somewhere, but I don't think you're gonna be able to count them off of your federal grants anymore.
So conversations are happening on various campuses, and the reason this uniform guidance is important is because what becomes direct versus indirect?
Exactly right. That's always been a subjective thing. And I think universities, I'll be very honest, I think they've taken advantage of this. I think they have pushed the envelope to, like, you know, like, I mean, I was a private funder.
Right.
And we gave no indirect costs at all.
Yep.
And we never had a grant turned down. So you can find money for the indirect costs associated with your research and so
No,
forth.
those are being subsidized by other.
Of course, by
Right.
some, but of course they're being subsidized, but I'm saying different, they come from
Right, but
a
if
different
every,
pot.
yeah, it comes from the federal pot,
Yes.
right? Like, so private foundations have gotten away with.
Yeah, yeah, and
with
most of them are
very
changing
low
that.
and no
Yes.
indirect funds for a long time, because they've assumed that the
The
federal
federal government
push
would that, but now that's
but,
not gonna
right,
happen.
so.
That's what, it's a whole change of the ecosystem.
It is the change to the ecosystem.
So,
And- yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, unfortunately, I'm not convinced that this federal government really cares whether research survives or not, which is, but it's not clear that the agenda is really dollars savings. So that's editorializing, but to the question about like what's the worst case scenario, I'd like to know sort of what is central thinking about, because I understand that the indirect cost rates are negotiated on a campus basis.
correct.
But really, if there's catastrophe, there can't be sort of a 23 campus approach to this. What is Central doing to sort of coordinate and thinking about, you know, where we might rob Peter to pay Paul?
Which is what you have to do.
So what I will say is that we're not there yet.
Okay.
We have 26. We have 26 different campuses, and we've got a working group that brings together the community colleges, the professional schools, and the senior colleges to say, what could we do in those particular instances to address what we think is coming down the pike. And we're not there yet. But we're having those discussions, and believe you me, we're thinking about how do we move forward.
Second question, just about JAG. So I understand sort of that, you know, as you've explained it, the strategy of the base model versus the enhanced model. Was there any discussion among those associations or any universities, because you highlighted the sort of uniform guidance, to change sort of what is allowable under a direct cost
Yes.
itemization?
Yes.
And are they coming, is there like an effort?
We haven't reached
Okay.
consensus yet,
Okay.
but agree, those conversations are crucial.
Yeah.
That if we are going down this road, we've got to talk about uniform guidance and where can we make those changes.
Yeah.
It's crucial in order for research to survive.
I'm gonna push you along here because we're running a little bit behind.
I think I'm about, let's see. So let's talk about potential cuts to federal funding. The first column is FY '25, and then the various agencies on the left-hand side. The second column is the president's budget recommendation, which sent shivers down everybody's spine because it was cuts from 50 to 100%. I mean, everybody was getting a cut. Where we are now is that the House has put something forward, the Senate has put something forward. And what I'll say is that people are familiar with the Big Beautiful Bill. This is not a part of the Big Beautiful Bill. These discussions are still ongoing and have not been resolved. I'll also say that this is, well, it is unusual, but, you know, as everybody knows, the federal fiscal year ends tomorrow, begins October 1st. So it's not unusual that these agencies are on continuing resolutions, meaning that they don't have their real budget for the next fiscal year. That's not unusual. But what is unusual is that these proposed cuts of these magnitudes on these agencies with a potential shutdown or a continuing resolution, and the agencies have no clue where their budget may be. So in particular, at NSF, for instance, if there was a continuing resolution, you'd spend what your last year's budget was up to 90% of that. But now those agencies can't do that because they don't know if they're going to get a 50% cut, a 70% cut. They just don't know. So as a result, institutions, academia, we're also out here, we don't know. And depending what happens tonight and tomorrow, we'll probably know even less. So people are making appeals. APLU is saying you can't cut NSF, you can't cut USDA, you can't cut everybody is, we're producing jobs with research. We're producing innovation with research. But we're fighting. And this is my last slide. We're not a part of the big, beautiful bill. Discussions continue in Congress regarding research funding across the country. Initial budgets that were so drastic, they may not be realized, but we do anticipate significant cuts in research. And so along those lines, as Hector was saying, our FY26, our FY25 numbers in terms of expenditures are up 5%. What we anticipate for FY26 is that we will probably do okay. But FY27 and beyond is what we're talking about as to how do we, CUNY, address what we know is coming in FY27 and beyond.
May I just say for the record, I just want to say thank you to Rose, the Office of Research, and the Research Foundation for the partnership, for providing, it's this constant emails, and they're constantly providing us updates, and it's nonstop, and to help kind of provide some calm and what are all these possible scenarios, because it's so much uncertainty and changing so much. They've been fantastic, and thank you to you and your teams for all of that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I
If
think
not-
it's important to highlight that, if you asked me November last year, what was a great research job, I would probably tell you running Johns Hopkins operations, right? Because they get tons, right, over $3 billion of federal money. In a way, we're lucky that we are about 30% federal. Our SUNY is about 60% federal, Johns Hopkins, right? So that puts a limit in terms
Yeah.
of how a hit like that is going to hit us. And it gives us a little bit of a chance to prepare to absorb the shocks. I don't want to create any kind of sense here of panic. There is a challenging federal environment. I think we can address it, and I think we can mitigate some of the impacts, which are real. And I'm not trying to kind of sugarcoat that, but it's also not like
Yes, well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
tempered by 30% of our activity. We need to keep pushing with the city, with the state, and with private, and then I think overall. But it is a challenging environment for sure.
Yes.
All right. So with no more items on the agenda, I move to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a second? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.